Trump picks Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be his Department of Health and Human Service Secretary. President-elect Donald Trump has picked Robert F. Kennedy to be his next Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services, a choice that would add to Trump's list of provocative picks whose confirmation processes will test the loyalty of Senate Republicans. Trump on Thursday announced the selection, confirming CNN's earlier reporting, saying he was thrilled to share the pick. The safety and the health of all Americans is the most important role of any administration, and HHS will play a big role in helping ensure that everybody will be protected from harmful chemicals, pollutants, pesticides, pharmaceutical products, and food additives that have contributed to the overwhelming health crisis in this country. Trump said in a post on X, Mr. Kennedy will restore these agencies to the traditions of gold standard scientific research and the beacons of the transparency to the end of the chronic disease epidemic and to make America healthy again. Yeah, Trump ain't playing, man. Big 4-7 ain't playing. Kennedy, who accepted the offer Thursday, has been one of the nation's most prominent anti-vaccine conspiracy theorists for years and has frequently spread false conspiracy theories about the safety and efficacy of vaccines. He has been in Palm Beach, Florida, for several days following the election. In a statement Thursday, Kennedy emphasized the importance of ridding the Department of Corruption and vowed to provide Americans with transparency so they can make individual health decisions. Here he is recently.
Eliminate any of the agencies?
To eliminate the agencies, as long as it requires congressional approval, I wouldn't be doing that. I can get the corruption out of the agencies. This is what I've been doing for 40 years. I've sued all those agencies. I have a PhD in corporate corruption, and that's what I do. And once they're not corrupt, once Americans are getting good science and are allowed to make their own choices, they're going to get a lot healthier.
You've also talked about fluoride in the U.S. water supply. You would seek to ban fluoride in the U.S. water supply?
Well, I would advise the water districts that are currently using it that there's a lot of new science out there. And in fact,
he says, I look forward to working with more than 80,000 employees at HHS to free the agencies from the smothering cloud of corporate capture so they can pursue their mission to make Americans once again the healthiest people on earth. It's confirmed as the top public health official in the country. Kennedy would oversee the operations of the Affordable Care Act, Medicare, and Medicaid. Though Trump has moved away from seeking to fully repeal Obamacare, it remains to be seen whether he and his health officials will release a plan to improve the law, as Trump promised on the campaign trail. Kennedy will also be involved in any changes Trump and congressional Republicans attempt to make to Medicaid, which provides health care coverage for low-income Americans. In Trump's first term, the agency tried to institute work requirements, which was largely blocked in court, and lawmakers unsuccessfully sought to reduce the program's funding. The program, which covers nearly 72.5 million Americans, is expected to be targeted in Trump's second term, especially as the GOP seeks savings to offset the tax relief they hope to implement. Kennedy's selection, first reported by Politico, is a notable one given that only days before the election, Trump's transition co-chair, Howard Lutnick, told CNN that Kennedy was not getting a job for HHS. He would not be in charge of HHS. He was asked on The Source with Caitlin Collins. No, Lutnick said, of course not. Man, and look at that. A couple days later, and Big 47 appoints him as the head of the HHS.
There's a federal judge decision by an Obama-appointed judge on October 4th of this year in which he's to send EPA back to the drawing board and said, you've never done the safety studies on this. And by the way...
And so what does that look like? Without debating, without going back and forth on the science?
By the way, it's lowering IQ in our children.
What would you on January 2025, we're 3 months away here, what would you actually do in your position
fluoride is on its way out.
And how do you make that happen? This is your chance, is what you're suggesting to me. How would you make that happen?
Listen to what I'm saying, okay, and then I'll tell you.
Okay.
I think fluoride is on the way out because of that court decision. I think the faster that it goes out, the better. I'm not going to compel anybody to take it out, but I'm going to advise the water districts about their legal liability, their legal obligation to their service zones and to their constituents, and I'm going to give them good information about the science, and I think that fluoride will disappear. For somebody, I'm not going to take them away. People ought to have a choice, and that choice ought to be informed by the best information. So I'm going to make sure the scientific safety studies and efficacies are out there, and people can make individual assessments about whether that product is going to be good for them.
Would that include COVID vaccines that are currently on the market?
I want the best science for every vaccine.
And as part of that, during the pandemic, the height of the pandemic, you were questioning the FDA and calling them out for approving the emergency authorization of the COVID vaccines. If you had been in charge of the FDA at that time, would you have blocked the authorization of the COVID vaccines, like you were suggesting publicly?
What I was saying at that time is the vaccines are not going to prevent transmission, which they were telling the public that they would. They were saying, you need to take this vaccine in order to protect grandma. I knew in May of 2020 that the vaccines were not going to protect against transmission because I was actually reading the monkey studies then.
But you would not have told the FDA. You would not have told the FDA to block the authorization of the
I would have
vaccine.
been honest with the American people.
And so you wouldn't have blocked it.
I would have been honest with the American people now.
So you wouldn't have blocked it.
I wouldn't have directly blocked it. I would have made sure that we had the best science, and there was no effort to do that at that time.
And if there was another pandemic that were to strike, why should the American public have confidence that you would allow a vaccine to be made available through the market, even if it's on
Well, let me point this out. That they should not have confidence in the people who are managing our pandemic. We had the worst record of any country in the world. So we had 16% of the COVID deaths in the United States of America. We only have 4.2% of the globe's population.
Now, in an interview with NPR News following the election, Kennedy laid out his areas of focus in Trump's administration. President Trump has given me 3 instructions, Kennedy said. He wants the corruption and the conflicts out of the regulatory agencies. He wants to return the agencies to the gold standard, empirically based, evidence-based, science and medicine that they were once famous for. And he wants to end the chronic disease epidemic with measurable impacts on a diminishment of chronic disease within 2 years.
Population. So whatever we were doing in this country was the worst of every country in the world.
So in order to do that, you say clearing out the corruption in your terms. Would that mean clearing out the top level federal service workers that are currently at the FDA and the CDC?
In some categories, I would say.
What does that look like? Yeah.
In some categories of workers, there are entire departments, like the nutrition departments at FDA, that have to go. That are not doing their job. They're not protecting our kids. Why do we have Fruit Loops in this country that have 18 or 19 ingredients, and you go to Canada and it's got 2 or 3?
Would you eliminate any of the
Well, I can't wait to travel and experience that. Genuinely, I can't wait to go to these different countries and taste the candies over there and see the dramatic difference of what the chemical processing here in the States does. Like, well, obviously, I'm from Africa. I preach about it all the time. But like my parents would tell me like ice cream and a lot of the things that they had as a child is huge big difference here. Now, I mean, here we've realized that a lot of people, as you see on TikTok, if you put ice cream out in the sun, it doesn't melt. Like if you go get those ice cream sandwiches from the grocery stores and you put it out in the sun somewhere, it won't melt. It'll just turn into some like weird glob, which is it's really strange. It's not even kind of strange, right? So, I mean, something has to be done about it. So kudos to RFK. There's a reason why, Trump appointed him, and there's big changes that need to be said. Obesity is a big crisis here as well. So,
To eliminate the agencies, as long as it requires congressional approval, I wouldn't be doing that. But I can get the corruption out of the agencies. That's what I've been doing for 40 years. I've sued all those agencies. I have a PhD in corporate corruption, and that's what I do. And once they're not corrupt, once Americans are getting good science and are allowed.
PhD in corporate corruption. How do we feel about RFK, man? Let me know in the comments, y'all. Let me know.